All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of Simply Finance with Shane White. I am pumped today to have Matt Feldman on the podcast, CEO and founder of Moku Foods. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Shane. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely, man. Would you mind giving everyone just a little background into you and then obviously the brand?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Matt Feldman, co-founder, CEO of Moku Foods. Moku is a clean label meat alternative company. So we take ingredients with a clean label or clean label ingredients and turn them into products that emulate the taste and texture of meat. And we started with a plant-based jerky in December 2020. And so we're just over 3 months old, and we're going to be rolling out some new products over the next year and a half.
Nice. That's awesome. Where did like the original idea come from? Was there something was there just a need for like a plant-based jerky, or like where did the whole idea and the conception come from?
Yeah, it started in 2018. I went vegan after watching a couple Netflix documentaries, and I was looking for a jerky that was soy-free because I'm intolerant to soy as well as gluten. And I couldn't find one that I liked, so I started making mushroom jerky out of the house just because mushrooms had a good meat-like texture. You know, they're good for our bodies and the planet. And it went from that to eventually meeting Thomas Bowman, who was the head of product development at Just. And when he left the company, I partnered up with him for about 6 months to make the first iterations of our jerky. And then
Got
from
it.
there, it just kind of snowballed.
Yeah. No, I love that. Is Do you remember kind of like the first conversation you had with either like friends or close family or anything like that, where you kind of were like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to jump in. Because I always think that on this podcast, I always like to break down kind of the 0 to 1 of how people
Mm-hmm.
get started. And I feel like it's really interesting in your story because, you know, it wasn't like you had a background in like plant-based foods necessarily. It just seemed like a passion. So how did you kind of like get to the conclusion that you're going to like go all in and start a business?
Yeah, so at the time, I had started a vegan meetup in San Francisco, and we had about 80 people show up, and I had everyone bring a snack or something to share with everyone. And I brought mushroom jerky, and the people there really liked it, but it's not that hard to please vegans, especially with meat alternatives. They're not that picky. So, but everyone liked it, and I was like, you know what? I was working in tech at the time, wasn't super passionate about what I was doing, and I was looking to start my own business and into something that I did like doing. So it kind of just flowed naturally. I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but I knew I needed to hire a chef. And just fortuitously, I reached out to a bunch of founders just to network and get to know different people in the industry, and landed a meeting with Thomas. And once I had that meeting, I knew that it was going to take off just intuitively,
Yeah. Okay.
just because he's one of the best product developers in the country. And then without really knowing what to do, I kind of just got from one level to the next slowly, and happy to dive into it in the podcast. But yeah, just really took it one step at a time.
Got it. Yeah. I feel like that's so important. A lot of people get overwhelmed with the idea of like, oh, I love this product that I came up with, but like, how do I get it made? How do I sell it? Like all these other things. Do you remember even like early on, like what were some of the first steps? Like, was it just making good food? Was it, getting out to family and friends? Like, what were some of the early things you had to really accomplish?
Yeah, so I think the biggest misconception for me was the fact that I thought we would go from prototype to scale, and I was dead wrong on that, because what I figured was, okay, Thomas is going to make the best plant-based jerky in the world, and then I'm going to be able to scale this and raise money and all that. But it was much tougher than that. And he did make, an unbelievable jerky, but it wasn't scalable. But with that said, I didn't know that at the time, which actually helped me, because I started raising some capital I got connected to some successful founders, Thrive Market founder, Casper Mattress founder, Soylent, and a bunch of these people came in as early angel investors and supporters. And I thought I would literally be able to go to a co-packer, but I tried, calling all the meat jerky co-packers, and none of them wanted to work with the plant-based jerky. So it literally took about a year and a half to figure out the steps to scale the product out, in the manufacturing. And once we kind of got that down, that's when we were, I think, an investable company,
Okay. Yeah.
especially from a venture point of view. But it took a long time to get there.
What early on when you were like, I mean, a year and a half, obviously for a lot of people, that's a lot of time. Were you still working full time in the tech industry while you were doing this, or did you kind of jump in and just take savings and run with it?
Yeah. So when I decided to start this business, I was still working full time, and I put about 75,000 of my own money in, and I said, let's see how far this can go. And then I basically told myself, once I get to a point where we're, raising capital and have momentum there, and it's too much to do both, then I would move full time into Moku. So about halfway into the fundraising process, we had some investors asking me why I didn't have Moku on my LinkedIn page, and
Ah,
that was the
yes.
point. Yeah, that was the point where I was like, okay, I need to, you know, end my tech job and go full blast into Moku.
Yeah, I could totally see that being a tough sell to raise capital, and they're like, "Well, you're not even spending this, you're not even doing this full time, right?" That was
Right.
probably a tough conversation to
Yeah.
have.
They understand though. I mean, it is hard to jump into something full time without being able to support yourself. Um, I think if you're transparent with the investors and you tell them that you're going to jump in as soon as you get to a certain point, I think it's all good.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And 75, I mean, 75 grand, that's quite a bit, I think, for most people who think about starting a business on your own and bootstrapping. Did you early on, like one of the questions I always love asking is, did you want to be able to bootstrap this all by yourself and see if it was scalable? Did you always know that you probably, just from looking at the business model early on, that you were going to need to raise capital? Like, how did you think through some of that? And how did you decide eventually to go raise capital?
Yeah, before that, when I decided to do Moku, I was working at a company that would feed us 3 meals a day. So what I decided to
Oh,
do was
nice. That's good.
literally break my lease and live with friends and mentors and anyone that would let me sleep in their house. And I ate all my meals at the company. So I literally didn't spend a penny for 8 months.
Oh,
And
wow.
all the money was going to Moku. So
That's
it made it
scrappy.
it made it a lot easier for me to, and I set time limits. I said, I'm going to give myself, I forgot what it was, 9, 12 months to do this. And I'm not going to
Okay.
stress myself out or put any pressure on myself during that time. I'm just going to go all in with Moku. And when I'm not working on Moku, I'm working my full-time job. So
Sure.
I wanted to give myself the best shot to get to that place where we can raise money. Because I quickly learned that with a plant-based, especially a meat alternative product, we would need development capital and manufacturing capital, maybe some capex capital. Um, it's not like a powder or a drink where there's a real road to scalability.
Yeah.
So I knew we would need to raise eventually. The thing I didn't realize was how hard it would be to make at scale, because Thomas developed it to be made in a kitchen and to be made in a very scalable way, actually, with like tunnel ovens and things that we probably weren't going to use early on. So we had to basically, develop the product again to be made for scale. And
Got
I
it.
can talk about, why and how that happened. But basically, we were making the product out of a commercial kitchen first, and then a small co-packer, and neither one of those worked. So we basically had to go back to the drawing board. And luckily, I had raised some capital at this point, and then we hired this guy Ali Buzari and his team at Pilot RD in Berkeley to really develop our product for scale, which took
Got
about
it.
10 months.
Okay. Yeah. Could you maybe explain to everyone that? That's probably the question most people listening right now are thinking is why was it not scalable from kitchen to, mass scale?
Yeah, so like we were working with a co-packer in California at the time, and we basically handed them our formula, which Thomas developed, and they tried to make it. And we did our first production run, and it turned out terrible. And there were just holes in the process that we didn't really know were going to happen. And I had to call off. This was in September 2019. I had to call off the launch, put my entire team on pause. Had to move away from the manufacturer. Had to tell all of our investors and everyone that was anticipating our launch that we couldn't launch. So it was a pretty tough moment. Luckily, I had a co-founder. I still do, Melissa Facina, who she runs a firm called City Ops, which is an outsourced operations firm, and she's much more specialized in operations than me. And she pretty much told me we need to go back to the drawing board and develop this product for scale, because it's not developed for scale right now. So she luckily had a relationship with Ali Buzari, and So we started working with him a few months later, and he just like really went back to square zero and made a bunch of changes to our product, anticipating the scalable nature that we would need to make the product in.
Got it. Oh, that's really interesting because it seems like that's like a common difficulty with people scaling food businesses is like once you get to the co-packing component, how many things end up coming up that you couldn't have even, you couldn't have guessed or couldn't have known were going to come up that can throw a wrench in developing a product. Um, was there any moments even at that point when you had to like put the brakes on, I guess, for lack of better words, that did you like second guess what you were doing and you like push through? I think it's like a really good probably inflection point for people to learn from on like what was your mindset like going through something like that, or were you really just like confident that you could go back to the drawing board and figure it out?
Yeah, I would say at no point I lost confidence in it, but it was a very low moment when I literally had 2,000 bags in my hand and I was at the fulfillment center. I was dropping off the product for our launch in a week, and I tasted a bag and I was like, I cannot launch with this product. Like this just
Yeah.
is not good enough. Um, but and I think like the fact that Melissa knew Ali, and I did some research on him, and I was pretty confident that he would be able to turn things around for us and get the product tasting better.
Got it. And that's the other thing that's been very consistent with the founders I've talked to on here is just the importance of good food. Like the fact that you stopped, you tasted it, and you're like, this tastes like shit. I can't sell this. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's like, it's so
yeah,
simple. But at the end of the day, like that's really like step one, in my opinion, of what the brands that stand out and do well. It's got to taste good first, right? And then it's got to have all the
absolutely.
benefits after that. How different has that product that you guys are selling now transformed from like the very first batch that you brought to that like vegan meetup in San Francisco? Is it like night and day, totally different product?
Oh, I mean, the batches that I was making at home, like I'm no culinary expert, and I was literally just slicing portobello mushrooms, um, marinating them in a sauce that I looked up online with coconut aminos and chickpea miso and basically clean label top 8 allergen free ingredients.
Okay.
And that it was good. It was good for vegans.
Yeah.
Like vegans were happy with it, but no, like flexitarian or people that eat meat would have liked it, I think, or they would
Okay.
have liked it as
Yeah.
like a mushroom snack. But what I was trying to create was a meat alternative to make it easier for people to shift to a non-meat option. I want to call
Yeah.
it plant-based, but I guess mushrooms aren't plants, so I can't call it that too much. But yeah, basically a plant-based alternative to make it easier for people to switch to something more sustainable or better for their body. So it's night and day. I mean, even from what the first co-packer was making, like, because Thomas developed a bacon strip, which was pretty long and it tasted more like bacon than jerky and it was really good. But when we started working with Ali, he moved to more bite-sized pieces
Okay.
and kind of transforming the texture into a meat-like texture.
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen them in person, but I mean, from the research I did online, I mean, they look very similar to just like normal meat-based jerky, like the visually. I was really
Yeah,
impressed when I saw it.
thank you. Yeah, it took over 100 iterations. The,
Wow.
the hardest part was getting the texture right.
Okay.
Yeah,
What was the difference? Like, what was it? What was it
it was
originally?
it was just a lot more moist and wet, I would say.
Okay.
And like we had to implement like 3 different steps to get the marinade to adhere correctly into the mushrooms and get the mushrooms to feel more like meat. It was tough. I mean, you can get them to do anything you want. It just takes a lot of time
Got it. Yeah.
to
So
figure it out.
what I think is funny too, and I love hearing this from founders, is during that process, like if you look back on your time going through that rough development stage, would you like was it a cool experience for you coming from like the tech world and then all of a sudden you're in a lab trying to figure out like how to get something to be less moist? Was that a fun part of this journey that you've been on so far?
So honestly, it was mostly the developers who were handling it. I was kind of
Okay.
there to sample product and give feedback. But it was honestly a weird moment because I dove full time into Moku, thinking we were going to launch in a couple months, and we hit that point where we had to take a step back, and I had to pause my entire team, and I honestly wasn't busy, and it was weird because I wanted to be you hear about the founders that are working 18 hours a day and loving it, but like super busy. And I wanted to be at that point, and I wasn't, because there wasn't anything to do. We weren't raising. We had raised about half of our round, and I was waiting till the product would get better to raise the rest. And it was just a weird moment where I pretty much had to be okay with, not being so busy and just like reading a book during the day, or taking a class on Google analytics or Facebook ads and things like that. So I don't know. I guess it taught me to kind of slow down a little bit and not always have to feel busy. And I knew that once I launched and we're getting closer to launch, I would be super busy. So I think just allowing yourself to, reach those moments where you're not going to be like crazy busy is a good thing.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. You also were going through, if my timeline's correct, you were going through a lot of this like final stages, even that the component you're talking about right now, was that would during some of the like heyday of COVID in 2020, I'm assuming?
Let's see. Yeah, actually it was. It was right before COVID. We decided to put everything on pause, I think in January 2020.
Okay.
So then right after that, COVID happened.
Which in hindsight, I mean, can you imagine if you would have launched a product that you weren't like psyched about and then hit COVID? Like that could have been like a death nail in the brand, probably.
Totally. And just like when you launch, you want the vibe to be right. You want people to be excited, and like people aren't going to be excited about a brand launch during the biggest pandemic of our lifetime. So looking back at hindsight, like all of the biggest pitfalls we've had, like my lowest points had been like inflections where it kind of saved the brand. They were huge blessing in disguises. And honestly, like that's taught me to, when those things happen in the moment, it sucks. But I also think back and I say, you know what? Like, I don't know if this is going to be good or bad. It could be really good, but since I don't know yet, I'm not going to stress myself out, and I'm going to try to move on from this as quickly as possible. So,
yeah. No, it sounds like you had a great mindset. I feel like a lot of people in that moment might have like crumbled, and you kind of just like stood up and were like, let's fucking figure it out. Let's get this done.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you said you launched in December of 2020. So you like you said, you've been up for a few months. Is that correct?
Yep. We launched in mid-December on mokufoods.com. And right now we're selling on there as well as Amazon.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was very impressed with your online presence. That's like where my world has been, e-commerce at RX Bar and other places. Yeah. You guys have a fantastic website, and your Amazon pages are phenomenal too. So nice work there. I was impressed.
I appreciate it. I owe that to Gabby on our team, she was our first hire. She did all of our branding, our website design, all of our photography. So she's been a gem for us.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. So obviously you're all on e-com. Do you think you've kind of like ridden the tailwind of like e-commerce's explosion in 2020 from COVID? I feel like that's a great time to launch a brand that's online first.
It's honestly great timing. I mean, COVID has been very difficult for so many people, but one thing that it's helped food brands is kind of shifting to online shopping. And I never thought, people would be comfortable paying $40 for, a 6-pack of jerky online and that to be normal. But now it is, because people aren't going to the grocery store as much, and their shopping habits have developed to buying stuff online.
Yeah.
So timing wise, launching, a few months ago, I think has really helped us, because, we get hit up every day from retailers, and we just don't need to go into retail yet. We're so busy with just supporting, 2 channels online, and we're going to be launching on Thrive Market in a few months. And
congrats.
Thank you. That we don't really need to go into retail this year.
See, that's powerful. That I've talked about that on here before. I went to RX in 2017 and kind of got to experience a lot of the distribution growth that we saw, especially in like Costco, Walmart, Target, explosion on Amazon. When you're a brand who in that position that you guys are in, it's just powerful, because you then have a lot of the leverage when it comes to pricing, trade agreements, all the things that a lot of brands get pinched on because they want to get on shelf. The longer brands hold out, it's a powerful position to be in. So good for you guys. How has like Amazon and D2C, how's that growth been over the first few months? Has it been above your expectations? Has it been in line with your expectations? I'm always curious in new brands, because every brand kind of has a different few first months of launching on those platforms?
Yeah, it's honestly been insane. We had pretty high expectations, but it's exceeded those, and the growth has been insane. Honestly, it's reached a point now where like we set up our manufacturing to scale pretty quickly, but we're having a hard time supporting the demand, especially on Amazon. We're trying to keep our Shopify from being out of stock, but Amazon has been out of stock for the last 8 weeks,
Oh,
and
wow.
every time we restock it sells out. So we're catching up, and that's another reason why we're not in stores and haven't launched on Thrive yet. But I think it's a good problem to have. I mean, we can barely keep up with demand right now.
That's fantastic. And just to be I'm just curious. So, I feel like there's two types of brands. There's brands that are dealing with that problem, and there's brands that are like struggling to grow. Did you guys do like a lot of pre-launch marketing, and like how do you think you guys built the demand so quickly?
There were, I think, over the last year and a half, people like heard about us, but we tried to keep a very low profile up until about 2 weeks before our launch. And I probably sent product to about 100 micro influencers and athletes I knew or artists to help promote our brand during launch week. So that definitely helped. And we had a decent sized email list, at launch. And I think email is the most important channel, as you probably know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we built up a pretty good list, and we had a bunch of influencers posting for launch week, and just being in like, I think LinkedIn is super powerful. Social media. We didn't have that many followers. We had a few thousand at that point, but I think word got around pretty quickly. But there's still so many people who don't know our brand, especially since we're just online.
Yeah, for sure. And do you have like, is a lot of your marketing like very specific to either vegan or plant-based type of consumers? Or you at this point, are you guys trying to go after like also people who are interested in meat-based products, or like how are you guys kind of like thinking through the first year or so of like marketing the brand really?
Yeah, I mean, what's great about Facebook and Instagram is you can really specifically target different groups. So there's a number of groups we're targeting, but the vegan and the plant-based audience is low-hanging fruit for us. But what's interesting is like the majority of our customers are flexitarians, and they'll write us and say that they eat meat, but they prefer this because it tastes the same as beef jerky and it's better for the environment.
Yeah, I've never
So
heard that term. Does that just mean, yeah, people bounce back and forth between
oh
plant-based
yeah,
and meat?
yeah.
I've never heard that before.
I think it's more just, yeah, flexitarian. Yeah, basically kind of flex between plant-based and meat, and more of like a conscious eating. When they do
Sure.
eat meat, they know where it's coming from and things like that. But yeah, I mean, we're targeting mushroom lovers, gluten-free, soy-free, vegan. You can, yeah, there's many audiences we can target on Facebook.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Have you guys learned anything early on? I mean, I know you're only a few months in since you launched, but has there been any like crazy surprises that you guys have as a team have had to huddle together and figure out that you weren't expecting?
I would say one is that the people who love, so on our packaging we say plant-based jerky, and originally it said plant-based jerky, and then it said powered by shrooms or mushrooms.
Okay.
And we used to do, like, I used to do samplings, and about a third of the people would see the packaging and say, oh, I hate mushrooms, I don't even want to try it. I was like, no, try it, it doesn't taste anything like mushrooms. And then they'll try it, be like, oh yeah, you're right. And also like one of my best friends absolutely despises mushrooms and he loves the jerky. So I didn't want to push people away that didn't like mushrooms. So we ended up just putting plant-based jerky. And the mushroom lovers get so mad at that. They
Oh,
say,
really?
yeah, they're like, mushrooms are not plants. And I'm like, well, it still fits into the plant-based diet.
See, I guess I didn't know that either. Like, what are they considered?
Well, they're fungi, so they're
Oh,
in a
okay.
different
Yeah.
kingdom. But I mean, I don't know. It just seems like it wouldn't harm anyone. But
Yeah.
the mushroom fanatics like get pretty pissed at that. So who knows? Maybe we'll
That's
change our
funny.
packaging at some point. But it's also a good discussion to have on with those Facebook ads.
It's also, it's just amazing too, just like once you get into any space, the people that come out. Like I would have never, I mean, it's true. I guess I knew that, but I would,
Yeah.
when you say mushrooms and plant-based, I didn't even blink an eye. I just assumed that was the same thing. So there we go. Learned something new today.
Yeah.
um, one piece that I kind of skipped over that I wanted to bounce back to was along the lines of, raising capital and then having investors. Um, for you as a founder, and then just as a general, team, before you had venture capital, obviously you hadn't sold the product yet, and I'm assuming when you're bootstrapped, your focus is probably a little bit more when you're thinking ahead. Like you want to grow top line sales, but you probably also are really focused on profitability when it's your own just bootstrapped money, right? Because you have to make sure you're funding the business. Once you get capital, and I'm sure it also probably depends a little bit on the goals of your investors in the round. But has that changed at all for you guys? Like, are you guys still really focused on top line growth? Are you focused on profitability? Is it kind of a blend? I'd just love to hear from founders, like where your head is like solely focused. And it could be
Yeah,
all of them.
it's a great question. I think very early on, the only thing I knew was profitability, especially for like a food business. I figured, you have to make money on each sale. And then I quickly, after talking to different people, I quickly learned that it doesn't always have to be that way. Like you can go through the tech model in food as well, and just grow. And then, eventually become profitable at some point. But I think for us, our strategy was and is to grow and have a point at which we'll reach profitability. So at this point, like, especially with plant-based meat alternatives, like your COGS aren't going to be, your cost of goods sold are not going to be what you want them to be in the first year, and probably even the second year. But it's like constant investment into the manufacturing infrastructure in order to one day, maybe a year or two down the road, get to a point where we're making this product at margins that we're very, very comfortable with. But it's a road to there. So I think us knowing that we don't expect to be profitable this year, the unit economics are slowly getting better and better. So I think there is definitely a road to profitability next year. But we're constantly raising capital, and to raise capital, you got to grow. So we're not really that focused on it yet, but we do have it in the back of our heads and kind of have it put out on a map to be at that point eventually.
Got it. Okay. And so you said, I mean, the cost of goods is a great example. Is there anything else that's like, I think it's people listening who maybe haven't either been a part of a food company or have a finance background at all. What are like other avenues? Because I've gotten this question before, is like, okay, if you sell it at an unprofitable rate today, like what are like other things that you guys are going to try to like get more and more efficient on in order to become more profitable down the road besides COGS? Or anything else that's like stands out?
No, totally. I think, the repeat purchase rate is the biggest thing, especially for a direct to consumer brand. I think early on, you really have to, you have to test it out to see like how much people want to pay for your product and how much advertising spend you're going to put towards it. But understanding how much it will cost to acquire a customer, and that takes a couple months. We're still figuring that out now. And then waiting another 3 or 4 months to understand what that lifetime value is for a customer is also very key, because that will determine how much you can spend on a customer to acquire them. It might be $15 or it might be $30. But if people are subscribing, more than you thought they would, then you can spend more to acquire a customer. So it's a fine line. It's kind of tricky to figure out. We haven't figured it out yet, honestly. It's something that will come over time. But I think, cost of goods sold is one. And then understanding how many times people will buy your product over and over again is the second thing, because paying for someone what you're doing is you're paying for someone to buy your product. That's what Facebook and all the digital marketing channels are. But what you don't know at the time, and especially when you launch, is how often they're going to repeat purchase, because that's essentially a free cost of acquisition. So it's very interesting. The whole D2C world is very interesting, and I'm definitely learning a ton in the first couple months of it.
Yeah, I think it's super fun. I mean, that's why I've been in it for so long and love it. I think I always think it's interesting too, the balance between Amazon and D2C. Would love to know your thoughts on that as you guys are early on. Just because, D2C, like your own website, if people don't know what D2C means, obviously you get all of the customer data. You get their name, their email, their address, and you can figure out a lot. It's very powerful knowing all that information. But then on like Amazon, for example, you have scale. You have just this wide swath of millions and millions and millions of people who shop on it every day. So but you don't get all that information. So how have you guys handled that? Are you guys trying to point more people to your website? Do you care where they go? I'd love to just get where your head's at with all of that too.
Yeah, no, we're definitely trying to point as many people as we can to our website, just for the reasons you mentioned. You have all that data, and also you have more control over what happens with the platform. I mean, Shopify probably won't change too many things, over the years, whereas Amazon can change anything whenever they want.
Yeah.
And, they have a claw over all the businesses that are running on there. So, yeah, we honestly treat it like two separate businesses. We have a team that is an agency that's running our Amazon business, and most of that is from customers that are already on Amazon and running ads on there. And everything else, influencer marketing, Facebook, Instagram ads, organic social media stuff, that's all pointing towards our Shopify site. And the goal is to have a higher percentage buying off of our website than Amazon, which is definitely the case now since we just launched on Amazon and we keep going out of stock. But the platform is so powerful. Like, you get a bunch of customers without paying anything, whereas on our website you literally have to pay for each customer, else no one will find it. But what's also very interesting about Amazon is they charge a 15% marketplace fee. Yeah. And that a lot of that gets offset by the insanely low shipping and fulfillment costs. So you're basically able to offset that. And for us, and I'm sure it is for most brands, like the margins are very similar now, just for that reason that like you're paying like $350 to fulfill and ship each order. You can't do that with shipping out of your own fulfillment center.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if you can get that balance and get your advertising to make sense once you scale and you're up and running for a few months, yeah, it's powerful, right? I mean, that's mm-hmm. I guess that Amazon's competitive advantage. They have warehouses everywhere you open your eyes.
Yeah,
yeah, it's wild. Well, that's fun. I mean, I think the stage you guys are in is where it's so fun. You're figuring it out. You're growing online. Personally, it's like that you control a lot at this point, and it's got to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it totally is. It's never a dull moment.
No, I bet not. Was building like a team? Was this like the first time you've really done that, like from scratch, and it's your own like organization you're building? What has that been like? Because I think for a lot of people too, like as a founder, you're all of a sudden you have people who are you're hiring someone as an expert in this area or that area, and then they report to you, which is probably another totally different challenge that most people don't realize they're getting into when they start a business.
Yeah, our team is very small. We have about 4 people, and what's interesting is they're all smarter than me in each area. I'm like the newbie, and like they're telling me what to do.
Sure.
Which is great. I mean, at a company in our stage, you pretty much have to hire experts, because I can't be telling people what to do. I'm learning it. I need someone telling me what to do and kind of owning that field. So it definitely doesn't feel like a dynamic where I'm micromanaging anyone or telling anyone what to do. It's basically like, Gabby runs all of the design and creatives and social media. So she's kind of running the show there.
Sure.
I'm checking in with her all the time, and we're working together a bunch, but she kind of owns that area. And then Melissa's team owns the operations. And they're just filling me in on what's happening and getting my approval on things. But I'm kind of just hopping around to all the different areas to make sure everything is going smooth and adding my input when it's needed. Pretty much like a play caller, I would say. Sure. But I'm not necessarily like the one running in the touchdown.
Got it. Yeah, that's a good analogy. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good. Obviously, you guys are early into this first product, and you guys have 3 flavors today, right? 3? Yeah. 3. Do you have, and you don't have to share anything if it's secret, but is there an idea after Jerky? Are there other parts that you want to go after? I'm assuming the brand is probably, there's more ideas in the tank that you guys haven't launched yet.
No, totally. And Jerky is just the first product. Like I mentioned in the beginning, like we want to be the clean ingredient meat alternative company.
Love
So,
that. That's cool.
when you look at Impossible and Beyond, like, yeah, they're great, but their label isn't great. It's, they compromise on health first. And we want to not compromise on health or taste and, create products that do taste like meat, but, have clean ingredients in them that people can pronounce. So Jerky was a great first product for us to, get off the ground. It's very easy to ship, lasts very long. So we were able to, have a presence online, but we're definitely working on other products where we just kicked off like an innovation pipeline project, where we'll be, planning out which products we launch over the next 1.5 to 2 years. And we just launched a beta bacon bits product at Goop Kitchen in LA on their Cobb salad.
Nice.
So it's kind of similar to our jerky, but smaller pieces and crispier. But yeah, mushrooms are incredible. They can do many things, and there's definitely a lot of meat alternatives they can make. But yeah, mushrooms are the ingredient that we're using now. We're not gonna only use mushrooms, but they're amazing.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like I have a lot to learn about mushrooms after this podcast. I need to like do a little more due diligence and understand what's all involved, because it's pretty cool that, you're able to find a product, and build like basically like a whole new product off of it. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, we're not the first mushroom jerky, but we definitely, I think we spent by far the most time working with probably the best experts and really getting them to taste and look like meat.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said at the beginning, I was really impressed. I'm like, oh, that like legit looks like meat jerky. Like that's super impressive. Do you have people like, I'm sure you probably did some of this. Do you have people who like, blind taste test? Can they tell, can you tell a difference? Like how close does it taste to meat based jerky?
Yeah, I would say you can probably tell a difference, but it's not that far off.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, just
I'm
in
not the
general.
best one. I haven't eaten meat in 4 years, so.
Oh wow, there you go.
Yeah, but there are people that leave reviews and email us every day that say, "Wow, like I literally can't tell the difference between this and beef jerky." It also depends on what kind of beef jerky, because there are so many different types now.
Okay.
And because ours isn't as tough as beef jerky, we wanted to make it easy for people to eat. And so some people are really used to like the really tough jerky where it's like hard to bite, where ours is a little softer than that.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. Knowing that, you guys obviously you've raised capital and you have some investment backing. One thing I always love to ask, because there are kind of like two different paths a lot of food brands tend to go down just in general. One being, hopefully you scale to a point and you can exit, right? Whether that's selling to a big CPG company or whatever it may be. Or some like to like potentially build like a long-term, I don't like to say family business. I feel like sometimes has a bad connotation of being small, but like, because there's huge ones, but just a private, enormous business that's like for you guys, plant-based, like empire. Do you kind of have like a direction that you guys as a company are kind of heading in long term? Or are you kind of trying to figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, like Moku is kind of reflects my lifestyle. It's everything that I enjoy. So it's definitely something that I would totally be happy doing, in 5-10 years from now, and be totally fine, building out that, clean label plant-based meat empire. But I think along the way there will be opportunities to get acquired. And for me, like what's important is if that does happen, that it's, companies that do reflect our values and align with our ethos, and not just someone that will pay us a big sum and be totally different and kind of not implementing the best practices with some of their other products. So, I mean, in today's environment, it's also so different than it was 3 years ago.
Right?
When RX Bar, got acquired 2 or 3 years ago, can't remember, but like now brands are going public with like 12 million in revenue and private equity swooping up brands super early. So I think like for now we don't even worry about that. We're just building our brand, sticking to our values and having fun with it. and then whatever happens eventually, we'll entertain everything. And I think our team and our board is very aligned, and I think we'll make the right decision whenever that happens.
Love that. I think the key there and what I took away was you love what you're doing and it's like your lifestyle. I just from talking to a lot of founders now, you can definitely pick up on two different vibes. It's like that where like just passion, like you've wanted to create this and you've got everything put into it versus someone who's like trying to build a brand for the sake of selling a brand. Very different mindset, different direction. And honestly, like the hurdle you guys ran into in 2019 slash 2020, like that doesn't usually come out the success usually doesn't come out the other end. I don't think when you're trying to build a business for the sake of selling a business.
Right.
So, hats off to you guys. That's really cool.
Yeah. And the other thing is like, I feel like one of our advisors told me this early on and it didn't really make sense to me, but he basically said, he's like, the successful founders are the ones that I guess, or the entrepreneurs who build successful brands are either the ones that, got lucky the first time and are doing it, know what they're doing the second time, or they have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
And
right.
They kind of operate at that level where like they don't know what they don't know. And that actually helps them because they don't know how hard it is. Sure. And that was kind of where I fell into. Like, I think for someone that has been in the food industry for a long time, they know the road and they know how hard it is to get from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2. And it probably stops them from starting their own company. Whereas me, I'm like, oh, I'll make a great jerky and then we'll be selling to hundreds of thousands of people because it tastes super good.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not how it works. But hey, I was naive in the beginning and I learned over time, but luckily I was kind of clueless in the beginning and just kind of kept my head forward and just kept driving.
Sure. No, and I think there's probably a fine balance because I've now been on all sides of it where it was like, RX before RX was acquired. I obviously now work really closely with a lot of people at Kellogg's. So you see both sides. Like there's, I feel like there's pros and cons. Like definitely there's some processes and things that working at a big CPG company for a long time can really benefit and maybe avoid some like pitfalls or, hurdles that you don't need to hit. Sure. But at the same time, sometimes then there's also this like in the back of your head, just like there's one way to do things, which obviously there's not. So probably have the benefit of that too, of like, I'm just figuring it out and we'll make do with what we got kind of thing.
Totally.
Yeah. So this is like my last founder question. Love this one and I'm pumped to hear what you say because especially since like you're passionate about this, obviously is through the roof. After your time at Moku Foods is done, what would you like to be like remembered for in the food industry? Just like what was it that Matt Feldman was known for at Moku Foods the most?
I'd say just like creating a product that made it easy to shift to, a plant-based alternative or, something in the plant-based diet. There's a lot of other things I want to do, that doesn't have to do with selling food products, but I think just making it easier for people to shift to something that is better for, both our body and the planet.
Got it. No, I love that. It's like not complicated, but it's super impactful. That's awesome. A few of the last questions I love to ask everyone because we've gotten a good list now. I always say book, but it could be book, podcast, just source of knowledge. If you had to suggest one book to the audience, what would that be?
I'm really into like the psychological books as opposed to like, food and business books. And Dr. Joe Dispenza is one of my favorite people. I listen to a lot of his audiobooks. And I think it's really about like how our thoughts kind of impact our actions and our mood and our personalities and things like that. And one of my favorites was You Are the Placebo by Joe Dispenza. I think all of his books are excellent.
Okay.
And then The 4 Agreements was also a great book. Both have nothing to do with food or business, but can definitely apply to any industry and anybody.
What was the last one called?
The four agreements.
The 4 Agreements. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. I will share these out. Those are 2 that I have never heard of, so I'm pumped to have those. I appreciate that.
Right on.
So the other thing that I think is really important, and it's just fun to ask because everyone's different. obviously with trying to, run a business, there's a million different things going on. What tools do you use to, track and accomplish goals, even daily tasks? Are you like a pen and paper kind of guy? Do you have apps you use? Like, what is it that you use to like just get shit done?
Yeah, I'm pretty simple. I have a Google Docs to-do list that I use and just check off things, and but more so than that, I use a pen and paper and write things down and cross it off. Like that goes a long way for me.
Yeah,
And
same.
I can probably be more organized with some of those more sophisticated tools, but so far Google and pad and paper has worked for me.
You know what's funny? I have talked to, like I said, quite a few founders at this point, and before talking to all of them, I had this like inclination that every successful founder must just be like super organized. They know what to do, when to do, and they're just crushing everything. I can't tell you. I bet 95% of the founders I've had are like, oh no, I have like a pen and paper and I might have like a Google Doc. Like that's probably what most have told me, which I think is
Yeah.
really interesting. 'Cause to me, that also allows like probably a lot more creativity than someone who's just like, I mean, to be honest, I'm probably a little bit too like, got to do this when I do this, very planned out.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I think it's very common with with entrepreneurs in general and founders is having a little bit of just like, yeah, use pen and paper, or it's here and it's just I figure it out and go, keep going.
Yeah. I would definitely love to be a little more in order like yourself, and I'll get there at some point. But for now, I'm just kind of always on the go, and like things come up all the time. And, the pad and paper works well for that.
Do you think there is something to be said about that last part too? Just about like kind of just always going, like always trying to like, answer things or move the needle a little bit. Sometimes I think that's just like that a simple thing that like founders almost have to do because there's so many things going on sometimes. But
Yeah.
maybe something about like less planning, just more doing.
Yeah, I think at this stage, when I'm still touching like almost every part of the business, it's hard to have a strict schedule, because if an email comes up or a support ticket comes up that is important, like I have to be there to answer it. But I think once you get to a point where you can hire people to, cover those tasks, and I can focus on vision and fundraising and PR, which is what, most CEOs and growing companies focus on. I think then you can be a lot more organized in the things you do.
Sure.
But at this
Yeah.
point, it's kind of wildfire, and um, I try to just like keep a balanced lifestyle so that I don't go crazy.
Got it. Yeah. How do you do that? How do you kind of keep a balanced lifestyle? Do you have any suggestions for listeners?
Um, I surf every day when I'm back in Hawaii, and that kind of helps me unplug from technology. And when I'm out there, I don't think about work at all. I'm just thinking about the next wave that's coming in.
Sure.
So that helps a lot. Play basketball as much as I can with friends, and I'm not great at this. I'm trying to get better, but just having a morning routine, like it's so easy to just get out of bed and jump on your email.
Yeah.
But to have a transition from sleep to work, and I try to do, something that makes me sweat. So maybe a little workout, like even a 10-minute workout, little cold plunge in the shower, and then a meditation, and then get to work. That's my go-to. It's just
Love
hard to
it.
stick with it every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I've tried religiously, probably, I'd say the last month. I try, and I've probably failed most days. My morning routine is like I try not to look at my phone for the first hour and just like plan my day out a little bit, meditate, stretch, just do some of the journaling stuff. It's tough though. It's you wake up with notifications and your brain's just
Yeah.
fire. So it's like I almost
Yeah.
need to like not use my phone as my alarm and just keep it plugged in like in
Right.
here in my office. So that way I just don't even have a choice.
Right.
But I'm with you. It is. It's like we've gotten to a point where we can do so much with our phones, but then we're also
Yeah.
like slaves to our phones if we don't control it.
Totally.
So it's crazy,
Yeah,
man.
it's so true. You can literally always be on your phone answering emails and be so out of touch with society.
Yeah.
So definitely need to create, for me personally, I need to create strict rules for like unplugging,
Yeah.
especially when I'm with like family and friends. Like I can't be on my phone answering emails, or else I'm just not in the moment with them. So it's tough,
Right.
but
It is tough. I know. I've tried to do like the no notifications on emails, but then you end up missing something. You're like, shit, I need to be able to see what's coming in. It's tough. It is.
yeah,
It's no one's, I don't think anyone's like fully figured it out yet. Right.
yeah, for sure.
It'll be like the next big thing. Um, the most important question, and for everyone listening, and I'll make sure to add all this to the show notes, is how can people follow along with your journey? How can they follow Moku Foods, and how can people try it, or what's the best place to try it?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, Matt Feldman. On our social media channels for Moku are at Moku Foods on Instagram and Twitter. And you can try the product on mokufoods.com and also on Amazon.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope you get to enjoy the rest of your time down there in really the Caribbean, I guess, and then enjoy your
Yeah,
time
thanks so
back in
much, Shane.
Hawaii, man.
Thanks so much. It was a pleasure being on here. Look forward to
Absolutely. I'll
staying in
let you
touch
know
with
when
you.
it's all up. Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you, and good luck with Moku Foods. I'm excited to see what you guys do, man.
Thanks so much, man. Good luck with
Awesome.
everything.
Yeah, appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Awesome. See ya.